Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? We're doing story time now with the Odessa Library. My name is Laura, and welcome. The theme for this week is Black History Month because, as you might know, February is Black History Month, and we're going to celebrate today with stories, a little bit of history, and some art. This month, of course, is full of celebrating and remembering Black history, but it's important to remember that we do this throughout the year, not just in the month of February. So with that, I'm going to show and share what books we'll be reading today. The first one is actually a recommendation. I'm not going to read it together, but it is an excellent book called Born on the Water by Nikole Jones and Renee Watson, and illustrated by Nikkolas Smith. And this is a children's book that's based on the 1619 Project, and it has some really excellent, important history of Black people and their roots. And since it's a little bit intense for young viewers, I would recommend that parents check it out, and if you think it's good for your kids, to read it together. So with that, the first book we'll read is Thank You, Amu by Oge Mora. Then we'll read When We Say Black Lives Matter, written and illustrated by Maxine, Beneba, Clarke. And we'll finish with Radiant Child, the story of young artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. And this is a story of an artist, and we'll use this book as inspiration for our own artwork. And for that, you can gather some materials now if you want. All we need, like usual, is paper or something to write on. Could be cardboard, and something to draw with. I've got crayons, but you can use pencils, paint, anything today. So with that, we'll start with the first book, Thank You, Amu by Oge Mora. On this first page, we have a note to the reader. Amu is pronounced Amu, is the Igbo term for queen in another language. Thank you, Amu. On the corner of First Street and Long Street, on the very top floor, Amu was cooking a thick red stew in a big fat pot for a nice evening meal. She seasoned and stirred it and took a small taste. "What a delicious stew," Amu said. "Tonight's dinner will surely be the best I have ever had." With that, Amu put down her spoon and went to read a book before supper. As the thick red stew simmered on the stove, its scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until... Knock! Someone was at the door. When Amu opened it, she saw... So those who are starting to read can see this word, knock, is spelled K-N-O-C-K, but we don't say that K sound, we just say knock. It's a little tricky with English, right? When Amu opened it, she saw a little boy. "Little boy," Amu exclaimed, "what brings you to my home?" I was playing with my race car down the hall when I smelled the most delicious smell, the boy replied. What is it? Thick red stew. Stew, he sighed. That sure sounds yummy. Amu thought for a moment. She was saving her stew for dinner, but she had made quite a bit. It would not hurt to share. Would you like some? The little boy nodded, and so Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. Thank you, Amu, the little boy said, and went on his way. With that, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. As she read, her thick red stew's scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until... Knock, knock. Someone was at the door. When Amu opened the door, this time she saw... a police officer. Ms. Police Officer, Amu exclaimed, what brings you to my home? I was on duty down the street when I smelled the most delicious smell, Ms. Police Officer replied. What is it? Thick red stew. Ah, stew, she said, and her mouth watered. That sounds mighty tasty. Amu thought for a moment. There was still enough to share. Would you like some? The police officer nodded. Once again, Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. Thank you, Amu, the officer said, and went on her way. And so, for the second time, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. Sure enough, as she read, her thick red stew's scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until... You say it with me? Knock, knock, knock. Again, someone was at Amu's door. This time when she opened it, she saw... a hot dog vendor. Mr. Hot Dog Vendor, Amu exclaimed, what brings you to my home? I was selling my hot dogs down the block when I smelled the most delicious smell, Mr. Hot Dog Vendor replied. What is it? Thick red stew. Whoa, stew! The vendor licked his lips. That sounds quite delectable. What do you think will happen next? So Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. And what do you think the hot dog vendor will say? Thank you, Amu, the hot dog vendor said, and went on his way. Throughout the day, people from all across the neighborhood knocked on Amu's door. She fed a shop owner, a cab driver, a doctor, an actor, a lawyer, a dancer, a baker, an artist, a singer, an athlete, a bus driver, a construction worker. Even the mayor stopped by. And each time they knocked, Amu shared. See all the people in her home. What a generous person. Soon the sky darkened, the streetlights brightened, and it was finally time for dinner. But when Amu opened her big fat pot of thick red stew for her nice evening meal, it was empty. How would you feel if it was an empty pot in your kitchen? Moo sniffled. There goes the best dinner I ever had. Sorry and blue, she sat at the table with her empty pot until... Can you read with me? Knock, 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 knock. Who could that be? Amu wondered. When she opened her door, she saw... the little boy, the police officer, the hot dog vendor, the shop owner, the cab driver, the doctor, the actor, the lawyer, the dancer, the baker. Why, everyone she fed today was at her door. I'm sorry, everyone, Amu sighed. My thick red stew is all gone. I have nothing left to share. The little boy tugged at Amu's sleeve. Don't worry, Amu. We are not here to ask. We are here to give. The police officer carried in a fresh salad. The mayor entered with a roast chicken. The baker brought a collection of sweet goodies. Even the little boy presented Amu with something special in a shiny red envelope. Everyone who had knocked on Amu's door that day squeezed inside her tiny apartment, and together they ate, danced, and celebrated. Amu's big fat pot of thick red stew was empty. Her heart was full of happiness and love. That dinner was the best she had ever had. But does the little boy's card say, "Thank you, Amu." Here is a note from the author, which is interesting. In Igbo, the Nigerian language of my parents, Amu means queen. Yet for me, growing up, it meant grandma. When my grandmother cooked, she danced and swayed her hips to the radio as she stirred what was often a large pot of stew. In the evening, my family would come together at the dinner table for her meal. If a neighbor was visiting, they were invited. If a friend had stopped by, they were invited. Everyone in the community had a seat at my grandmother's table. While my grandmother has since passed away, her giving heart has stayed with me. I see it in my mother, my godmother, my teachers, my mentors, and the other countless powerful women who have shaped my life. This book is a celebration of their loving, giving spirit. This is by Oge Mora. Lovely book about sharing and giving and love. So our next book will be When We Say Black Lives Matter, written and illustrated by Maxine, Beneba, Clarke, the author of The Patchwork Bike. So if you like this one, you might like that one. So, as you might know, this phrase, Black Lives Matter, has been used a lot recently, and this book, I think, does a great job of understanding where that phrase is from and why it's used. So that will start. when we say Black Lives Matter. Little one, when we say Black Lives Matter, we're saying Black people are wonderful strong. That we deserve to be treated with basic respect, and that history's done us wrong. As you might remember, in our Martin Luther King Jr. week, we learned that Black people have not always had the same rights as white people. Little love, when we call out Black Lives Matter, we're saying, walk with us, raise your voice. Tenor, baritone, alto, soprano will make a jazz howl of a noise. When we scream out Black Lives Matter and we march against falling night, we're saying enough is enough is enough, and we need to put things right. Darling, when we sing that Black Lives Matter and we are dancing through the streets, we're saying fear will not destroy our joy, defiance in our feet. When we whisper Black Lives Matter, we're remembering the past, all the terrible things that were said and done. We're saying they trouble our hearts. When we sob that Black Lives Matter, we're saying trouble still stalks to this day. That we've seen it, monster in the shadows, and must all help drive it away. My sweet, when we bellow Black Lives Matter, we're saying ain't no freedom till we get ours. And all Black folk still suffering will stand with you, we vow. When we smile Black Lives Matter, we're raising our spirits high. We're saying we are here and we are enough. Black, beautiful, brave, my child. When we laugh that Black Lives Matter, that's the ancestors inside. A thundering on the djembe drums and guiding us steady to rise. Feel the music in this meditation. When we know that Black Lives Matter, then darling, we know our worth, that we are as precious as every soul whose story has journeyed the earth. We see you, black child magic, your radiant black shine. We hear your Black Lives Matter. And we know we'll be all right. So this was written by Maxine, Beneba, Clarke. Wonderful. So let's keep one of these last pages in mind. We see you, black child magic, your radiant black shine. Because our next book is called Radiant Child by Jean-Michel Basquiat. Just gonna adjust the light so I get less glare. And this is a story about an artist. I might give you a little background before we get into the story. His name is Jean-Michel Basquiat. And that is a French name, actually. And he was born on December 22nd, 1960, and grew up in Brooklyn, New York. His father was from Haiti, and his mother's family was from Puerto Rico. Living in a trilingual household, meaning 3 languages, Jean-Michel spoke French, Spanish, and English. While his father had some artistic skill, it was Jean-Michel's mother, Mathilde, who drew with him and took him to museums. That was a little bit of background. Now we're going to start the story. That is him, and he signed his name Sami. Radiant Child, the story of young artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. Somewhere in Brooklyn, between hearts that thump, double Dutch and hopscotch, and salty mouths that slurp sweet ice, a little boy dreams of being a famous artist. In his house, you can tell a serious artist dwells. As he sits at a table with pencils scattered everywhere, Jean-Michel draws from morning until night with a serious face amid a storm of papers. He refuses to sleep until he has created a masterpiece. At night, images enchant Jean-Michel's mind, and he wakes from his dreams to add one more line. His drawings are not neat or clean, nor does he color inside the lines. They are sloppy, ugly, and sometimes weird, but somehow still beautiful. His art comes from his mother, Matilda, a Puerto Rican woman who designs and sews, cooks and cleans, and makes the house look like a stylish magazine. But most important, she lies on the floor and draws with Jean-Michel on his father's old work papers. From her, he learns that art is not only in the poetry books she reads to him or in the theaters and museums they visit. Art is the street games of little children in our style and the words that we speak. It is how the messy patchwork of the city creates new meaning for ordinary things. While visiting the museum, they look at his favorite works of art. Reading the story behind each artist, reading the story behind each work, this is how Jean-Michel learns what it means to be a famous artist. Back at home, he creates art on the floor as his father, Gerard, plays jazz records. Mama Matilde cooks arroz con pollo and calls Jean-Michel mi amor. The energy and life of the city can be felt in each line of his drawings. As time goes by, Jean-Michel learns that art has a healing power. After a car accident, he is scared and confused. Matilde gives him a book to calm his fears. It is filled with pictures of bones, skulls, and other body parts. Jean-Michel draws from it until he knows it all by heart. He is no longer afraid. Back at home, Jean-Michel's body heals, but his heart breaks. His mother's mind is not well, and the family breaks. She no longer lies on the floor and draws with Jean-Michel, but sits by the window, singing only to birds. So Jean-Michel is confused and filled with a terrible blues when Matilde can no longer live at home. Sad. He tries drawing the terrible out of his blues, but things are not the same. As Jean-Michel grows older, he visits his mother when he can, always bringing his artwork to show, telling her that one day it will be in a museum when I am a famous artist. A teenager now, Jean-Michel decides, Papa, I will be very, very famous one day. With a sly look, a twinkle in his eye. Jean-Michel leaves Brooklyn for New York City, the Lower East Side, a concrete jungle where only the tough survive. During the day, dressed in a green jumpsuit splattered with paint, Jean-Michel stays with friends, sleeping on couches and floors, leaving a barrage of collages and poem-filled papers everywhere he goes. At night, Jean-Michel spray paints the walls downtown with poems and drawings that catch the eye of artists, gallery goers, and passerby. Under his art, he signs the name Samu instead of Jean-Michel. Everybody wants to know, who is Samu? Samu moves from street corners to art gallery walls with powerful color composition and line, collaging and painting on anything he can find. His art is still not neat or clean, and definitely not inside the lines, but somehow still beautiful. With his magical charm, Jean-Michel draws a crowd, and when it's time to work, he prefers to be alone, with the radio and TV on full blast. Now, in expensive suits splattered with paint, he flips through stacks of magazines and opens books and paints into the night, and sometimes for days at a time, while sounds and images jump into his head. Jean-Michel, an artist among artists, never doubts one line, creating from a soundtrack that is all his own. People describe him as radiant, wild, a genius child. But in his heart he is king, so he draws crowns for himself and others he admires. A grown man now, with the art world in his hands, Jean-Michel still visits his mother when he can. And at his most important shows, above all the critics, fans, and artists he admires, the place of honor is his mother's, a queen on a throne. He is now a famous artist. Just like he said he'd be. There's a little bit more information in the back if you'd like to read. One thing to note is that he was a young, radiant artist, but he died very young as well, in his mid-20s. But still, he pursued his goal to be an artist. So with that, we are going to do a little bit of art now, inspired by this story we just read about Jean-Michel Basquiat, which he seemed to enjoy making art on the floor, and I really love making art on the floor too. So we're going to just hop down and make some art on the floor. Just one moment. Okay, welcome. Well, he used whatever he could find, even, I think, things on the street in New York City. We'll need something to draw with or paint with. I have some crayons, which might look nice on the rough paper bag, but you could use pencils, paints, anything really. So first, I'm just going to cut off some of this paper bag along the fold, just to work with. Bring this down. bring in crayons. And when we think about Jean-Michel, his style was, of course, kind of messy and rough, definitely not perfect, which I really like. And it can be hard. I am personally a perfectionist, and I like to have things nice and neat. But today, let's try to just be very free, kind of messy, kind of weird, the story said, to make a drawing. And it seemed like Jean-Michel drew some self-portraits, images of himself. So maybe you draw yourself today. So I'm gonna try it, draw myself as messy as I want to be. So maybe I'm gonna hold the crayon instead of like this, like the proper way. I'm just gonna hold it in my fist like that and see what happens. See if I can get some looser, scribbly lines. Start with the head, body. Kind of fun to just experiment. It does not have to be perfect at all. And like Jean-Michel, I guess, when I was young, I had a dream to be an illustrator, a children's book maker, really. And unfortunately, I lived in a small town, and I didn't know anybody who was a children's book author. So I thought, since I can't see an example of that, it's not possible, and I gave up for a long time on that goal of making books, publishing books. However, I couldn't shake it, and I kept pursuing it, and now I do make lots of different books. I make paper, and I bind books, and I write books and illustrate them, and I feel like I want to tell you all that if you have a dream, you should not give up on your dream. Keep pursuing it and working at it, and maybe like Jean-Michel, you can achieve what you set out to do. Whether that's becoming a lawyer, a musician, an artist, a doctor, a veterinarian. There's so many things that we can become if we just set our mind to it. So maybe I'll show myself here in this drawing as a book maker, book publisher, eyes, mouth. So how can I show that books are important to me? Maybe I add some letters in the background, because words are made of letters and building blocks of books and language. So just start writing letters. Now we're working toward sort of weird self-portrait, and that's fine. It's nice to let out some energy with art. It's one of the greatest things we can do with art. Express ourselves, share it with other people. So here's my paper bag drawing in the style, perhaps, of Jean-Michel. And I hope this inspires you to make some art today or any day and not worry about it being perfect. Give it your own style and maybe show your dreams through art. So with that, I'm going to wrap up for today. Thank you all so much for being here and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.